layers in Photoshop CS and CC. Everything I'm doing tonight is applicable to Photoshop CS, Creative Suite, or CC, Creative Cloud. And layers is what makes Photoshop special. And it helps you control your edit. It helps you really, it's like having a strong man, do your heavy lifting in your house. I mean, it is a powerful program, and layers will help you really have control of your edit. And when I say strong man, I was thinking like, really just like a Superman, So Photoshop is like Superman, and layers are what makes it so special. Okay, so I have an image here, and it's straight out of the camera. If you were with us last week, or a couple weeks ago, I can't remember when it was now, we did just a 101, kind of just got you familiar with your workspace. And during that time, I did talk about layers, just quickly about layers. Tonight, we're going to go into it, and it is a loaded topic. We will spend the whole time and probably still leave feeling like we could talk longer about it. So let me just get started. Layers are individual, like transparencies. If you have an overhead projector of days of old and you laid down different transparencies and wrote on them, then it would look like one picture from the top down, right? Looking at it. And see, I created just a blank layer right here. So this is one layer. We could have 50 of those, or we could have 5 of those. Each one, we could add something special to it. So with this blank layer that's just empty, I could put something on it. And I'm going to do that just to illustrate this layer really quick. So I'm just going to use the brush, and it's kind of brown right now, and that's okay. So I'm going to show you that. There it is. I just scribbled on some brown color here. We turn off our background, which is the base of our edit. I'm in the layers panel, and I'm kind of jumping right in, and we're going to double back a little bit. So I'm just going to jump right in with layers and then slowly decipher each one. So we have this blank layer that has nothing on it until we put something on it. And believe it or not, I have a lot of use for blank layers. And I'll show you that in a little bit. So a blank layer has nothing on it. Now, I'm going to delete that one. The next type of layer we have, so there's 3 main types of layers that we're going to use, and they show up in your layers panel. So if you have your Photoshop open right now, that's great. You could do that, and you could click on the layers tab. So you might be on paths or channels, which we're not getting into tonight. You'd want to be on the layers. If you can't find your layers panel, you might be thinking, okay, that's fine and dandy, Amanda, but I don't even see my layers panel. Go up to Window, and then layers. So I've unchecked mine. So now my layers panel is missing, isn't it? And that happens sometimes to people. And they would contact me like, I've lost my action panel, or I've lost my layer panel. Go to Window, click on it, and it's going to show back up. So there's the layers panel. All right, so we talked about a blank layer. Now let's talk about the pixel layer. And I'm going to create a duplicate layer here, and it's a pixel layer. So everybody should know, so we got pixels. When you take a picture with a point and shoot, or with an iPhone, or some other type of smartphone, or a DSLR, they are taking in that, and it's pixels that are knit together to make that picture. So I call this a pixel layer because it has pixels. If we zoom in, we turn this background off, so we're still seeing the picture because we're seeing pixels. We zoom in, zoom in, zoom in, zoom in, zoom in, zoom in, we're seeing little pixels put together to make this picture. And there are times when you need a pixel layer. So like if you want to make somebody thinner with the liquify tool, well, you need those pixels in order to be able to manipulate that. If you want to smooth the skin, we need the pixels. So there's definitely great use for the pixel layer. Now, I want to probably have you write this down. The times you use the pixel layers like this, should be few and far between. The majority of your editing really should be done with adjustment layers. And we'll talk about why in just a little while. But maybe write that down as a note. Try and use adjustment layers when at all possible. And I'll explain why. So the next type of layer, I'm just going to throw this up there here too. So we have blank layer. I'm double clicking on it to label it. And I recommend doing that as you edit. If you're going to have a extensive edit, you'll want to label it so you know what you did with that particular layer, because 30 minutes later you're like, what was that again? I can't remember. There's so many here and I can't figure out which one's which. So double click on them like that and you can edit what the name is. So the third type of layer we have is adjustment layers. And we can see if I click on this circle that's half black, half white down here at the bottom, then we can see all of our adjustment layers. Now this is all of them. You can find some of them up here in the adjustment panel. They're not all here, but the majority of them are here. The ones that you're going to use with photo editing are here. I think mine is solid color. I do use solid color, but for photo editing, and I'll explain later, much later probably. So we can click on one of these to create an adjustment layer. And adjustment layers have a little icon here and then have a mask. And adjustment layers are like a small little mathematical algorithm type of thing that adds things, adds colors or contrast to your image. And they're considered non-destructive because we're not utilizing pixels for this. And we can go back into them multiple times. And I'll illustrate that. So I can make a change here. So let's say just a little S-curve pop here, just a little one. And then we go on down and I start editing something else, and maybe I don't know, let's say I do something like this, and we're going to get into what I'm doing in just a minute. So maybe I just want to darken the background a little bit. And we're going to lower that down. And let's just kind of pretend that I've been editing for 10, 15 minutes. And later I'm like, you know what? That curves I did, I really should have done something different. Let me go into that one and change it. I can just double click on it. It opens it back up. And then I can manipulate it and do whatever. Okay? So there are times you're going to want to go back in and alter. Yes, we can lower the layer opacity. We can use a mask, which we'll talk about. But I want to impress upon you that with adjustment layers, you can go back into them multiple times. Whereas if here on this pixel layer, we can also do adjustments, but I wouldn't be able to go back into them. So I'll turn the curves. I'll just name it curves pop. That's what I'll call it. If I come here to this pixel layer, which again is a duplicate of this background, it's the same pixels all over again, I could come up to, oh, come on. Sorry, it pops over. Come up to image and then adjustments and come down here and do a curves adjustment on the image. We can move it so we can see. And I can hit OK. And it applied it to the pixels on that layer. And then 10 minutes from now, if I decide, oh, I really wish I had done something different or I need to alter that, you can't just double click and go back into it. So when I double click on this, layer styles comes up, which is things like glows and strokes and other stuff. It's not a photo editing thing that we would want. So I can't go back in and change what I did to that. I can add a layer mask, I can lower the layer opacity, or I can delete it. But that's it. I can't go back into it like I did this other one. With this one, I can just double click, go in and change it. If I need to change it 50 times, I can change it 50 times. So adjustment layers are your friend. All right, adjustment layers are your friend. You don't need to worry about writing that down because I'm pretty good about expressing that in the notes. Okay, So we have our 3 types of layers. We have our, and I will back out of those, and let's just do a little something here. Okay. Oops, I created 2 by accident. And then a duplicate layer. All right, so we have our pixel layer, we have our adjustment layer, and we have our blank layer. So 3 types of layers, and you should be using all 3 in your photo edits eventually as you get familiar with Photoshop and get the hang of things. Okay, now you saw that there was 2 ways to create an adjustment layer. You can click on one of the icons up here. You can click on this circle that's half black, half white. You can also come up to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, and do it that way. Photoshop and Lightroom, but especially Photoshop, they love to give you multiple ways to do the same thing. And I don't think they do it just to frustrate you. They do it because some ways work more intuitively for other people. So what works for me may not work for you. And so they put in different ways you can access things because it might just work better with your flow for that particular thing. There's also multiple ways to create the same effect using different adjustment layers or different tools. And again, it's just what may work with one image one way may not work for another. So I love that they give us a variety. They give us choices. It's not one size fits all, and I think it's beautiful. But with that comes a little complexity and a little confusion when you're first getting started. So take your time and don't, and if you see me doing one thing and you read a tutorial with another thing, don't think one is right and one is wrong. Just say, oh, this is one of those times Amanda talked about where I'm seeing a completely different way to do the same thing, and that's okay. All right. I wanted to show you, because so many actions, when you play them, have a group, I wanted to explain what a layers group is. So we're going to kind of do a surface view, and then we're going to dig in to adjustment layers and dig into mask and dig into some photo editing. So what is a layers group? Well, if you are doing a long edit, you have a picture that's requiring a lot of work, then you may want to group your layers by subject kind of thing. So if you did a lot to the eyes, let's pretend all of these were for the eyes that we'd worked on. Then I could group these together by highlighting them. So I clicked on the bottom, I held down my shift key and I clicked on the top, or vice versa. I'm on the top and I hold my shift key and click on the bottom. And then I can create a layers group. And there's 3 different ways you can create a layers group. I give you 2 in the notes, so don't worry, you don't need to write this down. So one way is you can, actually I'll show you all 3 very quickly. You can click on the top right-hand corner of the layers panel and do new group from layers. Okay, or we can come over here to layer and we have group layers. And then you can also just do Control G. Control G as in group. On a Mac, it's Command G. That is in your notes. You don't need to write that down. Okay, so we've created a group. And let me make some changes so that you could see. Let's see. Let's create. Alternate other levels. I'll kind of change the white balance a little bit. All right, so we have this group. If we turn off the eye, it makes it inactive. With all the layers, there's a little eyeball beside it. And when you click that and the eye goes away, now it's inactive. It's not that you deleted it, it's just that it's not showing. So here we've turned off all the layers at once by deactivating the group. Okay, to see what's inside the group, you just click the little triangle beside the folder. All right, so we have the little folder closed up, click the triangle, folder opens up, and we can see what's inside the group. Now you can also come in here and manipulate the individual layers. So I might say, okay, well that one's a little too much, I still can lower it down. And the change is still effective. So the group is just a way to keep it tidy. All right, it just helps keep it tidy. And I will create a little snapshot. We'll come back here. Some of the actions, or all the actions at Lux, are in a group already. Okay, and then you can just click down here and you might say, okay, it's a little too bright, so maybe come in here and turn off. All right, that's a little bit too bright, so tone that down a little bit. And then if we need to do something else to it, we could do that. Or you can lower the opacity of the entire thing by clicking on the opacity and just lowering it down. And a mask was put on. We're going to talk about mask in a little bit. But a mask would allow us to conceal the effects in a particular area that we thought was too strong, or we didn't want it on it at all. We could cover that up with the mask. So the group just helps kind of keep things tidy. And I can still keep editing from this point on. I could say, all right, well, let me darken things up a little bit. That's too much. All right, but I can keep editing on top of that group with layers. I'm just adding layer upon layer upon layer. And again, think about it as a transparency overhead projector. All right, that will help. So if you're too young to know what an overhead projector is, go look it up, Google it. But my teacher would walk in, my math teachers especially would use them, and they would start out with a particular equation or something, and they would write, and then she'd lay down another transparency. It was clear, and then she would write some more. But sitting in my seat in the class, it just looked like one to me. I couldn't see the individual layers. It looked like one overall document or image. It just looked like one. So think of the layers like transparencies. And we could pull them out. So I could come in here and say, all right, well, maybe I don't want this one altogether, or this one. Maybe I'll just delete that one. Okay? So we can just pull things out like you would a transparency and delete it. I did Command Z to undo that. All right. So now that we've gone through what kind of layers that you use with photo editing, and we've gone through grouping the layers. Oh, I want to show you how to ungroup, okay? Well, you can access them, but you may say, I didn't mean to make that group. Do I have to start all over? Oh my gosh, what a mistake. Why did I listen to Amanda? So you can ungroup, all right? Come up to layer and then do ungroup layers. That's one way. Again, there's multiple ways to ungroup, but that's an easy way. Layers, ungroup. And now all the layers are out there individually, and they're not neat and tidy in that one little folder or group. So that's how you can ungroup or group. Okay, so let me go back to this one. Okay. Now we're going to talk again about this layers panel, and I'm going to pull it out so we can kind of look at it. I'm going to do it right here, a little bit bigger. And if you're wondering, how did you do that, Amanda? Just click and drag the tab out. So I can click out the adjustments and sit it wherever I want to sit it. So there were notes with the previous class on Photoshop 101 and customizing your workspace, and that was something I talked about. But play around with it. You can't damage your Photoshop this way. Click and drag. You can always reset them. You can nest them back together, and how you do that is come in here and just hover where you want it to go until you get a blue line all the way around, and then let go. Or you can pull it back out again and set it wherever you want to set it. So don't worry about breaking your Photoshop. You won't break it. I'm just pulling this out because this little go to webinar training bar on the side, I keep hitting it and it's frustrating. All right. So I've got my layers over here on the side, and we're going to ungroup this. This is your layers panel or palette. You might hear palette, panel. I say both of them. And we're going to concern ourselves with this right here, this line, this row where it says normal and then opacity. And then we're going to concern ourselves with all these and down here at the bottom. This, this where it's blue is showing me which one is active, which one I'm on right now. So if I was going to make a change, if I'm going to do something, it's going to apply it to this layer. Whereas if I'm on this layer, but I really think I'm on this layer and I lower this layer opacity down, thinking I'm lowering this one down, it can mess things up. And that happens, I promise, even to the most experienced Photoshop user will get in a hurry and will forget that we're not on the right layer. And I'm sorry, I was reading a message from Laura. And so I'll think I'm on, I clicked over to a layer and I messed with the layer opacity, and lo and behold, I had not, and I was still on this previous layer, and I made a mess of things. So just kind of be aware of that and make a conscious effort to click on the layer you really are intending to manipulate, to tweak. Okay, so actually I'm just going to delete all these. I'm going to highlight them and hit delete on my keyboard so we can start fresh. So this is the image straight out of the camera. And I'm going to create my blank layer so we're clear on things. I'm going to create an adjustment layer. I'm just going to do an empty brightness so it's there. Nothing was done to it. It's changed. I didn't tweak it, so nothing happens. If I turn it off, picture's still the same. Turn it back on, picture's still the same. And then I'm going to come down and make the duplicate layer by doing Command J or Control J. That's the quickest way to make a copy of your background or of another layer. We can always copy adjustment layers or pixel layers. You can make a copy of any layer by doing Command J while you're on that layer or the background. So it's Command J as in Jack or Jill. Or on a Mac, as on Mac, it's Command J, and then on a PC, it's Control J. And I have these little shortcuts in the back of the notes. If I do a shortcut that I don't have on the notes, I'll let you know. All right, so we've made that, and it's a background copy. However, if I copied this one up here, Command J, see, it's just going to say that, and if we pull it out, it's probably going to say 2. Or actually, this one might, yeah, the first one, the second one. It's going to hit delete. So we have our adjustment layer. We have our pixel layer. So nothing is changing this picture so far because we've not tweaked anything. I didn't utilize the adjustment layer. It's just sitting there empty, unused. This pixel layer, we haven't done anything with it. So the image is unaltered right now, even though we have layers out there, because we've just thrown them out there and have not used them. So I'm going to start up here with this brightness and contrast. I could do something with it. I could brighten and add contrast, or I could darken. So see how I'm just tweaking it that way? Or I can just bring it back. And so it's empty again. There's nothing. I didn't do anything to it. I reset them both to 0. I come up to the blend mode. Blend mode is where it says normal. This is in your notes. Don't worry about writing that down. Where it says normal, that is your blend mode. Now I'm going to come to multiply, and let's see what happens. Whew, really darkens it. What it has done is taken those pixels and multiplied them by 2. So if you think, imagine a little girl who takes a crayon and she lightly colors in an apple, an apple picture, and then you give her another one and she colors it in again. If you put those two back to back, that redness is going to be much darker, isn't it? It's going to get much more vivid and dark. And that is what's happening here with the multiply blend mode. You're multiplying it. You're intensifying it by itself times 2. So that is the multiply blend mode. What if we tried screen? Well, this is really brightening things up. So we lose some contrast, but it does a nice light brightening. It's not like a stark white, blowing you out, sun shining in your eyes kind of bright, but it's a very nice, soft brightness. And I will use the screen mode a lot for brightening. So I've brightened it up, but it's too much. And that's when we can use the layer opacity to tone it down. So the screen mode is one that I use a good bit, and I don't have it written down what all these blend modes do. So if you want to write down multiply darkens, screen brightens. All right. So maybe I'll layer screen mode. Okay. So now I'm going to duplicate this, Command J. So we have another one on top of it, and I'm going to change the blend mode instead to soft light this time. So now what soft light does is it adds some light, but it also adds some contrast and color. And I'll turn off this one so you can see. And we'll do it all the way up. Okay. Turned off all the other layers. This is the soft light blend mode. There's before. Put it over here. There's after. You'll find tutorials from long ago where they will instruct you to make a duplicate layer, a pixel layer, and change the blend mode to soft light to give you this color punch, this color pop. You don't need to do the pixel layer. You can do just a adjustment layer. Don't do anything to it. Just leave it blank like I left the brightness and contrast alone, and I changed the blend mode. And why this is helpful is, well, we already have a mask on that layer, so if we need to utilize it, remember that the adjustment layers are very small little changes to the file. Whereas when we create a duplicate layer, we're adding pixels. And every time you add pixels, what else do we add to the file? Size. We're increasing the file size. As we add pixels, it's going to become more of a memory hog on your computer. So what starts out as, let's say it's a JPEG. This was a raw file, but say you have a JPEG of, I don't know, 2 megabytes. Your edited file might end up being 5 because of all the weight you bogged it down with the pixels. So be careful about that. I usually use 1 pixel layer, and that's for skin smoothing. Well, 2, and sharpening. So we need the pixels to sharpen, and we need the pixels to smooth. So sharpening and smoothing are the only ones I do pixel layers for. Okay, well, I'm going to show you. I'm going to turn this one off. So all of the layers are off. They're inactive. I'm going to turn on the pixel layer. No changes, right? Because we're seeing down to the bottom. Well, we're seeing, this is stopping us. We can turn this off. We're seeing the pixels from the original. We copied it. Nothing's been done to this picture. I'm going to come up here and change the blend mode to soft light. There we go. Sorry. We needed that background to shoot it through, to see to the bottom. All right. Once we change the blend mode, it is going to go into almost like a sieve, like it's going to go through it. It's going to filter through it. When we didn't, this is getting a little complicated, I know. When we didn't, we could turn this off and we're still seeing all the pixels. Once we change the blend mode, then we are not going to see that. It's going to shoot through it. Think of it literally as shining light through it. But while it's shining light through it, it's adding color and contrast. And we have a big change from that to that. And it's too much. I'm not saying this is a good change. But just doing a soft light blend mode layer can often give your image a good bit of pop that it might need. Okay, so soft light blend mode is your friend. The other one you might use is overlay, and it's like soft light but stronger. Okay, so the blend modes I want you to know about are multiply, screen, overlay, and soft light. The rest will wait. It's too much to get into now. So I'm going to change this back to normal. All right. we're going to start editing this picture, and I'm going to teach as I go, because I think that'll be the easiest way to kind of get into the nitty-gritty. We've talked about blend modes, layer opacity, what the layers are, that kind of thing. So let's edit this image now. When you look at this, what is the first thing that kind of pops out at you that might be wrong with this picture? If you're in my Lightroom skin tones workshop, or no, yes, it was skin tones last week or 2 weeks ago. It's kind of running together. We did skin tones, and I taught people how to kind of recognize if an image is too cool or not. And this image is too cool. And I'm not going to get into the how or whys right now. We will eventually do a skin tones in Photoshop, so stay tuned for that. But this image is too cool, and so I want to change that. And the easiest way to change this is to change the white balance. The white balance is that overall temperature and tint of your image. A very easy way is either with levels or with curves. So we can do a curves adjustment. People love curves. Sometimes they get Photoshop just for curves. And what we can do is use the gray eyedropper in Photoshop, or in the curves, the gray dropper. We have black, gray, and white, and click somewhere in the whites of her eyes. So I just clicked once. I'm going to click again, changes it. We can zoom in if we want to get a little different spot, maybe right here. I think that's a little bit better. So we have a pretty good difference there, before and after. I think it may be a little strong. So if you can't find the perfect, if you can't find the perfect one, get close to it and then lower the layer opacity, okay? Lower the layer opacity. That layer opacity, if you're with me last week, is just helping us reduce how much of that we're seeing. So we're only seeing 50% of that change now. We move it back up. See how it gets a little more yellow? I think it just needs to go down just a little bit. I think about right there. I'm happy with that. That was with the gray dropper. You can do the same thing with a levels adjustment. So I'm going to come over here and do levels. I'll grab the gray dropper. I deactivated the curves layer by clicking the eye. You see it's not there anymore, so we're not seeing the curves layer. I grab the gray dropper, and I'm going to come in here somewhere. See how we're having very, very similar results that we did in the curves. Curves and levels are very closely related. Almost everything you can do with curves, you can do in levels. And I think it's a little more straightforward. So if you're new to Photoshop and you're trying them out and levels seems more intuitive to you, great, stick with it. If you want to go to curves, fine, that works too. But they are definitely close siblings. Definitely close siblings. All right. Okay, so I'm just going to delete that one. Whoops. Come back here. Now I'm going to name it. I'm going to let's do white balance tweak. So I tweak the white balance. Now the next thing we're going to do is give it a little more contrast and pop. And what would you use for that? Levels or curves. Those are the powerhouse adjustment layers, okay? The curves and levels, either one. And let's do levels first. A thing to note, this is the same histogram that you would see in your camera when you took it. And here what we're going to do is just change this black endpoint by clicking on the black slider and moving it to the base of the mountain. So it's adjusting the darkest areas of our image. Bring it in to the side. And generally, you want to bring in the white slider into the base of the mountain. But I tend to leave that alone unless it's a good ways from it. I tend to just leave it there. And then this gray slider in the middle is your midtones. And if you move the slider to the left, it brightens things up. See, it adds haze too. You're going to lose that contrast. And if we move it to the right, it darkens those areas up. So I'm just going to brighten it just a little bit, just a little. And when you do that, I might find I need to adjust the blacks a little bit more. And we'll do just a little bit. Okay. So it kind of took away that haze that we had there, didn't it? And I'll just do a contrast like that. Now what should we do? Well, let me show you how to use that blank layer. All right. Remember, the blank layer has nothing on it. It's empty. It's not there. And notice when I turn those adjustment layers back on, there's nothing there either. Because remember, they're like mathematical changes. They're not pixels. We're not manipulating the pixels. In order to see the picture and the changes, we have to turn that background back on so we can see it, so we can shoot through to the bottom layer, to that bottom, transparency we started out with if you're thinking about the overhead projector again. All right, so I got this blank layer. So I'm going to show you the easiest under-eye circle fix ever. And you're going to use just your brush, okay? We have our toolbar, and you just want the regular brush. So if you have it on some other brush that's got a little droplet on it, something like that, you don't want that one. You want just the regular brush tool. Now, see this color box down here in the bottom of the toolbar? That is the color that's going to get applied when I brush. So let me show you this. Do you see the brown? Is that what I want? I don't want that. So I'm going to back up. And if you have white or black, if I have white, well, white's going to show up. I don't want that either. What I want is color that's very close to the under-eye circle, but is brighter than that. So I need to sample it. And how I sample it is with the eyedropper. Over here in your toolbar is the eyedropper tool. And you can just hit I on your keyboard, and I have it written out how to do this. Okay. And I'm just going to click on the skin where it looks good. Good color. Now look what's happened. It's still pretty dark, but let's see. Well, maybe move down a little bit. But if we sample the under-eye circle area, look how much darker it is. Look how dark that is. And if we sample down below it, it's a lot lighter. So now I'm going to brush. I'm going to hit B on my keyboard, and I'm going to lower the brush opacity. Just like the layer opacity reduces how much we see of that change, with the brush opacity, it's reducing how much the effect comes through the brush. Now, it's cumulative, okay? So if we keep swiping, it's going to keep applying and applying and applying it. So if we really only want 48%, I need to only go over it once, okay? So there we go. Like that. Before, after. I'm not done yet, though. I'm not done. So I'm going to sample this other side. Down here where it's bright, and then I'm going to hit B, and I'm going to brush. Okay, and sometimes I will go over it twice if I feel like it needs it. And now I'm going to lower the layer opacity because we want it to look natural. And I'm going to do this side again, just a little bit like that. So she still has some under-eye circles. You don't want to take them out all together. Before and after. Now, let's label it. That's under-eye. Now I want to kind of take care of this vein on her thing. Now, a lot of people think that you have to use a pixel layer, like a copy of the background, to use the healing brush, but you don't have to. You can still use a blank layer if you come up here and check Sample All Layers. Sample All Layers. And then it's going to allow you to use a blank layer on it, and it's going to look down and sample all the layers. So I'm going to come up here, and I want to make sure my brush is soft. I want a soft brush. So what I did was I clicked over here with the brush. A lot of your tools are brushes, meaning they're going to be a circle, and it's either going to be hard or soft. Hard means it's very defined, and soft means it blends into the pixels around it. Once I clicked on that, okay, clicked on the arrow, my hardness was at 100%, meaning it's very hard, meaning where the change it makes is going to be very defined. And that's not often what we want, because we want, good edits, blend into the pixels around them so you can't see where it starts or stops. So I'm going to lower that hardness down. And I'm going to come over here. Whoops. And I can just do like that. And it did a pretty good job. I'm going to back up. All right. And come back here and start fresh again. Okay. And maybe I only do a little section at a time. That might look a little better. Or maybe not. Maybe straight across. Sometimes you have to play with it. And I have it on content aware. What if we tried it on proximity match? That did not work, did it? So we're going to back up, come back to content aware. It looks a little better. Still, I might pull it down so it blends in a little bit better. All right. We can also do this down here, this little thing. I would want a new layer. Make it small. I don't think that's a freckle or mole, or I would leave it. Okay. Now, her eyes don't need really brightening, but if we wanted to do that, we could create a hue and saturation. So we're going to desaturate and brighten. And we're going to get into using masks now. Okay. So all of our edits up to this point, we've been happy with it. And they've been either global edits or they've been very local edits. So contrast and white balance tweak, those were global, meaning it applied it to the whole picture without reservation. We loved it, and that's what we wanted. We wanted it everywhere. Undereye circle fix was very local. It's right to her under eye circles. And then this was the vein. And then this was the scratch or bump over her lip. All right, so good. Those we're happy with. But now we've got it so that we have a global adjustment that we don't want everywhere. I don't want this picture like this. I only want to whiten her eyes, which really don't need whitening, but we're going to do it for the sake of the example. So what I need to do is I need to hide this effect and bring it out only where I want it to show through. So I have a white mask, and in your notes, don't worry about writing this down. I have it in your notes, okay? White mask, it's just showing you everything. It's hiding nothing. It's saying, hey, look at this. Isn't it great? And then we can conceal it in areas with a black brush. So I'm going to hit B on my keyboard, and now if I have a black brush, whatever color is in your foreground, I know this is kind of, one thing after another, and you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, it's getting so complicated. Don't worry, it will come. It'll come. Just take it step by step. So here, we've got our brush. It's black. So now if I brush somewhere, let's say like right here, whoops. Now we're seeing the real image, aren't we? We're seeing the real colors. And that was with a black brush. Black is going to hide, okay? Black is hiding. It's concealing. But I don't want that, so let me back up with the history here. Okay. Instead, I only want it to show through in particular areas. So I'm going to invert this mask by doing Command-I. Command-I or Control-I. That's in your notes. Don't worry about writing it down. All right, so just absorb this. Just sit and listen and think and ask questions. Type in questions to me. So now that white, hazy, desaturated picture is being hidden by this black mask. And I can draw out the change with a white brush. Right now my brush is black. I can brush till the cows come home and nothing's going to happen. And when I say brush, those who are really brand new, you might be thinking, I don't understand what you mean by brushing. I'm clicking my mouse and just wiggling around. I know that sounds funny, but when I first started getting into editing, I was like, I don't even know what they're talking about brushing on stuff. So sometimes I forget to explain that. When I'm brushing, I'm just clicking my mouse and moving it around the area I want it. Okay, so the reason we're not seeing a change is because we have a black brush and a black mask. Well, remember black is hiding. It's going to conceal. Well, concealing and concealing. It's double concealing. Like it's really not letting us see it. We need a white brush. So I'm going to hit X on my keyboard. Or I can just flip the little arrows like that. So now my brush is white. And if I brush, see it coming through? Whoops, sorry. See it coming through there? But we only want it on her eyes. Now, it's going to be too much. And I want to really caution you not to whiten eyes so much that they look like alien eyes or demon eyes. You know, you don't want that. Right? That is not good, is it? It's not good at all. Well, there's two things. So if you know you've got, let's back up. Okay. If you know that the effect is really strong and you only want a little of it, there's two things I could do. I could lower the layer opacity way down, or I can go ahead and start with a small brush opacity. So maybe I only want 25% of it to come out. There we go. And you do the same thing for teeth. Okay, so it's a little bit, and I still don't want it that much, so I'm going to lower it down. All right. So we've got that black mask. We're going to do another black mask. So now I want to smooth her skin a little bit. And I need pixels to do that, don't I? I'm going to do Command J or Control J on this background layer down here at the bottom, because that's where my pixels are. I got to go to the pixels. And so I clicked on that layer and I duplicated it by doing Command J or Control J. And now I'm going to click on that layer and I'm going to smooth them. And the way you smooth in Photoshop is we're going to blur it. So what we're going to do, we're going to blur it. So we're going to come up to Filter and then Blur. And you might use Gaussian blur. I like noise median, but for the sake of simplicity, we're going to do Gaussian blur. And they're giving us a little preview here. And maybe we back up a little bit so we can see it. Let's see. Let's do here. Okay, so you can see the preview of how much it's going to blur. And so maybe we want, I like to do more because I always can back it off later. Whereas if you don't do enough, then you got to do it again. So do it stronger, and you can always lower your brush opacity or lower your layer opacity. So I'm just going to do about 7. Just keep it simple there. So we have a blurry image, don't we? Which I probably really could have done stronger now that I look at it. So we have this blurry image. If I turn this off, it's inactive. It's not blurry anymore. But we only want it blurry on the face, on her skin, on the face. That's the only place we want it blurry. So I can add a mask, and how you add a mask is down here at the bottom. We talked about adjustment layers. Oh, here's a way to create a group also. Forgot to tell you all this. There's that. Sorry about it. All right, our adjustment layer, and right beside the adjustment layer icon to the left is a layer mask. It looks like a rectangle with a circle in it. All right, can y'all see that right here? I'm going to click on it, and then it adds that layer mask. Well, did that layer mask help us? It's still blurry. Remember, I only want it blurry on her skin. White is showing us it. So right now it's a global adjustment and it's not being concealed anywhere. I need to make this a black mask. So I'm going to hit Command I or Control I on a PC, and now it's hiding it. So the blur is under there. We just can't see it yet. And how we can get to that is by using a brush. All right, so move this back over here. And, oops, I did not want that. Let's stick it here. We're going to use a white brush. Our foreground color is white. Good. Brush opacity is too low, so I'm going to go with about 70% brush opacity. Make my brush bigger. How I make my brush bigger and smaller, the brush size is that circle, is on my keyboard. If you look at the letter P and you look to the right of the letter P, there's a left bracket key and a right bracket key. Left bracket key makes it bigger. Right bracket key makes it bigger. Left bracket key makes it smaller. The scroll wheel, if you're used to Lightroom and you have a scroll wheel and that makes your brush bigger or smaller, that doesn't work in Photoshop. You're going to have to use the bracket keys. Okay, or you can come up here and change the size, but that is time consuming, and just use that keyboard. Okay, so then we can start brushing. And then we can kind of hope that we get it in the right spots. All right. Again, I should have done stronger. Now, I'm just going to back up. A quick way, and this is not in your notes, so you might want to write it down, a quick way to see where you're going. If you look at your keyboard and look at your enter key or your return key, okay, you're on the left side, right side of your keyboard, the right side of your keyboard, look at the return key or the enter key, and there is a diagonal, like a slash key, okay, a backslash, and you're going to click on that. And it's most likely going to turn your image red, or it could be pink, like a hazy pink. It could be different strengths of red, okay? And now, wherever we brush will be a very light color, like almost a white, could be a pistachio green. The smaller your brush, the stronger the effect, okay? So if you noticed, when my brush is bigger, it's not as strong a color as when it's smaller. Kind of intensifies it when it's smaller. Strength is going down. So just that way we don't hit somewhere we don't intend to hit. Okay, I just hit that key. Now I'm going to go back and hit that slash key again, and it's up. But again, I told you we probably could have blurred a little bit more. It was not strong enough. I can always go back, so I'm going to click on that layer again. So here's the mask. So you can kind of see her face there where we brushed. This is our pixel layer, and I'm going to blur it again. There we go. Now I'm going to lower it down a little bit. Okay. All right. So why did you keep doing that? That thing pops out. We have a little edit here, and we're going to, so there's before. I'm holding down my Alt key on a PC or Option key on a Mac and clicking on the background layer, the bottom layer. So that turns off all of our layers. So there's before and there's after. And there's more I could do to this picture. I don't have time. What I do want to caution you about is some people will, let's say they do a pixel layer and they say, oh, okay, well, I'm keeping this in order of what I'm doing. If these are the things I did first, then I'm going to drag this up to the top and then liquefy or do whatever. Look what just happened when I drug that layer up to the top. Right, so there it's at the bottom, and I'm going to drag it to the top. Where did all my changes go? Why did my layer suddenly stop working? Why isn't my edit right? Why isn't this action working right? So I would get emails like, it's not working right, and all the changes disappear, or the action's not working right. And I would do a screen share with people and try and figure out what was going on. And what was happening is everything was fine, and then they would create a background and drag it up to the top. Remember when I said you're looking from the top down? So if my teacher brought in those transparencies and she's writing all this stuff and she's got all these layers and there's this big, long, problem that's been solved, and then she brings a picture of a tree and puts it on top of it, are we going to be able to see the math problem below the tree? No, it's going to block it, isn't it? Well, these pixels are blocking our other layers. If we change the blend mode, okay, so if we change the blend mode, remember I told you blend mode is shooting through, we would see it. But if you do anything like, skin smoothing or liquefy or sharpening, and you're bringing up a copy of this background and bringing it up, then you're hiding all of your changes. So layer order matters. And I have that strongly illustrated in your notes. Don't worry about writing that down, okay? Layer order matters. Right? I have an example of a good layer order, and I have an example of a bad layer order. So just pay attention to the notes when you get that. I also illustrate, I talk about some of the other adjustment layers and what they're really good for. Okay, I talk about mask in there. And then I talk about why to use pixel layers. So we already talked about smoothing skin. I did mention liquefy, kind of thinning people down or moving things, but also for sharpening. So if we just want to sharpen the eyes, then we can do a copy of the whole image, or we could just, I have seen some tutorials where they just copy the eyes and they sharpen those. Generally, people do the whole image, though. All right. Trying to think anything else I've missed with layers. I know there's still a lot of questions, but what we're trying to do is we got you started with Lightroom with Photoshop 101. Okay. A lot of people, because of the Adobe photography $9.99 deal where you can get Photoshop and Lightroom, a lot of people are new to Photoshop or new to Lightroom. So we're trying to get people started in, get them familiar with their workspace, get them familiar with layers, what layers are, what types of layers, how to utilize the layers, and then move from there. Okay? And I know it's very technical, but honestly, Photoshop is very technical. I do want to show you quickly, before we go, I'm going to take a snapshot. All right, so I'm in my history panel. There's a little camera at the bottom of your history panel. And I'm going to label it. I'm going to do clean edit. Okay. Now we come back here and let's run an action. So if I run Bella on this, or let's maybe do something like Chateau. Okay. Oh, it's beautiful. I love it, right? Now, it was on the straight out of the camera picture. So if you're going to run actions on a straight out of the camera picture, then you're going to need to probably do some tweaking afterwards. So I still need to handle her under eye circles, and I still need to handle the vein here, and I still need to smooth her skin a little bit. So you can either do that before you run an action or after. Pretty much, I do recommend running it after. All right, so I'm going to take a snapshot here, and this was Chateau. I'm going to come up here. Now I'm going to flatten it. And that's when people, sometimes they're like, I understand layers, but I don't understand why we need to flatten. And there is a way around flattening, but I'm not going into that tonight. All right, I don't have time, and it just complicates things. So for purposes here, it wasn't a hard edit. I'm just going to go ahead and flatten it. And one easy way to flatten is go to Layer and Flatten. And imagine, my teacher did all those transparencies with this complicated formula and all this stuff, and then maybe she took it to this press and she put them all in there and she went and kind of just scrunched them all together. So now they're there. They're one. So now we have a new, and I call this background like the base layer, because it is still kind of a layer. So we have this new base, right? And now I'm going to run the action on that, just because it was just easier that way to keep things simple here. And now this is what the edit looks like. And it's a little strong probably, so I'm going to do that. Or I can use the mask, and I might say, oh, I don't want all of it. I'm going to hide a little bit of it. I'm going to use a black brush. And maybe I just hide a little bit of it over her face. Just a little bit, maybe. Or not, I can back off. So now let's go to the history and let's do it. So that is Chateau run on a straight out of the camera copy of this, or straight out of the camera image. And now this is Chateau run on the clean edit, where we fixed the white balance. We fixed her under eye circle. Same action, very different result, isn't it? So when you get actions, you have to consider, what is it playing on? Is it playing on a good, healthy image, or is it playing on an image that has some problems? And most action designers do create actions to play on clean edits. If you're new and you didn't join us last week, a clean edit is an edit that makes the image look as good as it can be, but still like it came out of the camera that way. And somebody could, I could show this picture and somebody would look at it and say, wow, that is a good camera you have. Got that a few weeks ago. I did not take this picture, but I'm sure everybody's heard that. Instead of saying, man, you are a great photographer, they say, oh, what a great camera you have. So, but this looks like it could come out of the camera. It doesn't scream Photoshopped. And so you want a good, clean edit and then run your actions. If they're creative actions. A workflow action is different. Workflow actions are designed to help you get that clean edit. Okay, so now let's say I'm done with this clean edit. Say I'm happy with this. I want to save it. I'm gonna go to Layer, Flatten. You can say I can save the layers as a PSD, but I'm not gonna worry about it. This is a very fast edit. The only time I save a PSD with all the layers out is if it took me a long time to get to it. But if I can do it quickly, I'm just not going to bother with it. I'll just recreate it. But so I've done that. Now I'm going to sharpen it and do Command J. I need pixels to sharpen, and so I created the new layer, and I'm going to come up to Filter, and there is a Sharpen section. Okay, so we can do Unsharp Mask, Smart Sharpen, Sharpen More, just sharpen. There's different choices. I recommend that you go through and you try each one and see which one you like best. Another way to sharpen is you go to Other and then High Pass, and this is just what I do. And I'm going to increase the radius to about 4 to where I can just see the outline of the picture, and I'm going to hit OK. So we got this gray image, and I'm going to change the blend mode. Remember, it's like shooting light through it. And I'm going to change it to soft light. And now we have sharpened this image. I can turn it off. So before the sharpening, after. If you look at her eyes, you can tell it. Before and after. And then I would flatten it again and save the image. Not for web, but just save as. And what I like to do, so let's just do it to my desktop here. And I don't want a PSD, I want a JPEG. And I'll come through and just say whatever the file name is, and I'll do edit or clean. And then I'll hit save. Quality, you want anywhere from 10, 11, or 12. Okay, so 11 is fine. And it's just how much data is kind of being stored with it. But you don't want to go below 10 for print. Definitely not for print. Don't go below 9 for the web. All right, there's a whole lot more we could talk about. We just don't have time tonight. So let's do questions. All right. All right. Let's see. All right, the notes were not available during the session. We wanted everybody to just kind of sit back and listen. And I let people know what was not on the notes. They could jot that down, but everything else I showed tonight was on the notes. All right. What is the difference between, okay, great question, Cindy. What is the difference between a group layer, merge visible, and flatten image? That is very good. All right, so I did talk about a group layer, which I think you asked the question before I talked about it, so I did that. But let's talk about merge visible and flatten. And merging is very much like flattening, except for if you want to have a clear background. Okay, so for photo editing purposes, merge visible is the same. Let me show. Let me do something. All right. Okay. So actually, don't want that. I'm going to change my background content to transparent. So let's say you want to create a logo or something like that, okay? So it's when you see a checkerboard, it's blank. It's nothing there. And now, let's say I just put some type of shape. Let's do Christmas tree. Okay. So my logo is a Christmas tree, right? And then maybe I type on it too. Let's see. Amanda Paget Photography. Okay. And I want to make it all black. Just cause. All right. So if I merge these layers, okay, if I merge them, so I'm going to come up here to the little corners, just what I do, and do merge visible. So now we have one layer that has the tree and Amanda Paget Photography on it. It's now one layer. I can add more things to it, and it'll be new layers, and I can merge that, and it will continue to be one layer. So that, let me take a snapshot. So now I'm going to come back to here. So we've got two layers again. Now let me flatten, and let's see what happens there. Uh-oh. Now I have a white background. So if I want to go and put this logo on an image, it's going to have this rectangle and the tree and Amanda Paget Photography. It's not going to be see-through. Whereas the one before it that I did is see-through. Does that make sense? Now, when I do this, let me just do this. I'm on this one, and you're going to save it as a PNG. Okay, you got to make sure to get it as a PNG. All right, and let's just do sample logo or tree logo. All right. So now I can, let's say that this is, I'm going to resize this image for the web, which I would not normally do it in that process. I would resize it, then sharpen it, not sharpen, then resize. That's not healthy. But now we have it for the web, and I want to put my logo on it. So now I can go File, and let's just place. I'm going to go to it, PNG, or the tree logo. Here we go. And you can see through it, right? You can see through it. If we instead, and it doesn't matter, I need to flatten this one, and I save it. All right, I'm going to save it as tree logo 2. And even if we do as a PNG, save, okay. Come through, now I'm going to place another one. Place, and tree logo 2. See the difference? It is going to carry around the white background with it. So merge visible is most advantageous when you're creating graphics. When it comes to editing photos, merge visible is going to be the same. Does that help, Cindy? Screen and multiply. So let me do that again. How did I darken the background? So let's go back to clean edit. And let's say I want to darken the background just around here. So let's create another adjustment layer. Let's just do like levels. And I'm not going to do anything to it. See, I'm not going to mess with those. They're going to stay the way they were. And I'm going to change the blend mode to multiply. So there, I really darkened it quickly, didn't I? And I could have darkened it with levels, but sometimes it's just faster to do it with multiply. And so there it is. And I don't want it everywhere. I just want it on the background. So this time, instead of making it a black mask, I'm going to use a black brush. So we have the brush, and it's black, and I want to hide it on her. So now we hide it on her. Now the problem with doing it this way, you got to be careful. You can create a halo. So I don't want to create a halo. And then I will lower it down. There we go. So the multiply blend mode, that's one way to darken. We can also darken with curves. We can darken with levels. I do want to show you something really quickly. Okay, whoops. And if I come down here all the time when it's right up here, please forgive me. It's just I started with Photoshop Elements, did not come into Photoshop for a few years after that, and I always had to use this. We didn't have the little icons, so it's just natural for me to go down there. All right, so I'm going to do a curves adjustment. Now I showed you can use the gray dropper to tweak the white balance, but you can also use the black dropper to set a black point. So let me just go back and go to the original. And let's do curves, and we'll do our black. And you're going to click on the area that's like the darkest, and sometimes it's way in the shadows, or the area that should be the darkest. It could be way in the shadows, it could be on the shirt. So I can do that, or I can come in here. So see how it darkened it up, and it even kind of tweaked the white balance a little bit, didn't it? Then you can take the white dropper and click on something that should be white. Now the problem is we really don't have anything in this picture that should be white. Maybe her t-shirt right there, so we can try that. But you see, it's not working, is it? So I'm gonna back up. So I can't often use the white dropper, but this gray dropper is something that should be neutral, and that's how it helps us with that white balance. But what I want to show you is look what it did to the color. So we can see our color curves really, and they're in straight lines. But when we did this black dropper, it tweaked them, and that's how our colors kind of changed. Now I want to reset it, and if you click on RGB, you can see we go to the red channel, we can go to the green channel, and we can go to the blue channel. So if you have an image that is too cool, we can come in here and just pull down the blues a little bit. Now, the problem with doing it this way is you can be like, it's like a teeter-totter, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, up and down, and sometimes it's just easiest to do the gray dropper. And so I tend to just go that route and then get as close as I can and then lower the overall layer opacity. That often helps me. Now, why do we use snapshots? And can I tell you that I have helped people who have used Photoshop for years. I'm talking 5-6 years, and they will not know about the snapshot. And when I show them, like, was that a new addition? I was like, how long have you been using that version? And they'll say like 3 years. I'm like, not with that one, because I've been using it all that time with that one too. I'm not familiar with CS3. So I started with CS4. So 4 had it, 5 had it, and 6 has it. So, and CC. So you go to the history panel. If you can't find your history panel, go to Window and then History. All right. Now, PSD users that are here tonight, you do have a history panel, but you don't have a snapshot. I'm sorry. So that part, no, this is not applicable to you. Now, so you create a snapshot so you can jump between like moments in time. And this was one snapshot of just showing the layers, right? This is our clean edit. And as long as your layers are open, it holds those layers for you. This is Chateau run on straight out of the camera. So if you ever see SOOC, that's straight out of the camera. That's a raw image, not edited. This is Chateau on a clean edit. And then this was me flattening it and sharpening and doing something else to it. I can't remember what it was. All right. So it helps me jump between images. And why would I need to do that? Well, sometimes if I'm playing with different actions to see what look I want, so I'll run it, take a snapshot, then go back to the clean edit or go back to the original or whatever and run an action and then do a snapshot. So I can compare and say, oh, okay, well, this looks like this and this looks like this. And that is a good way. Also, you can save from this point. So let's say you have a client and you want to give them a clean edit, you want to give them a black and white, and you want to give them an urban or a vintage. That way you can do those and then just go and save. You just do that and it's quick. The snapshots, once you close this file down, the snapshots go away. All right? They go away. When you open it back up, it will be a brand new file. It will not have those histories, those snapshots for you. And why I say that is because in Lightroom, if you're familiar with using the snapshot in Lightroom, and if you aren't, then you need to look at that. I love my snapshots. Those stay with you forever. Those files, they hang with them, as does the history, whereas the history in Photoshop also goes away as soon as you close down the file. And the history is only, like, I think I have mine set to 50 history states. So once I hit to 50, it's going to knock off the oldest one. And if I do another one, it's going to knock off the next oldest one. So it never is it keeping the entire history of the edit, only the last 50 steps or the last 30 steps. And you'll know what you can up it or down it. So if your Photoshop is slow, you might reduce the amount of history steps it's keeping. If you got a super fast computer with lots of space, maybe you want to increase it. And how you do that on a PC, you're going to go to Edit and down to Preferences. And on Mac, you're going to go to Photoshop and Preferences. Okay, I'm just going to click on General. And I'm doing this so you can see there's lots of options here for you to tailor your workspace, your interface, how things are handled, your performance, colors that show up for your guides and grids and your cursor, all kinds of stuff. So here, under Performance, see I have mine set to 50 history states, but I can decrease it. And what that will probably do is help my Photoshop run a little faster. If it, on my desktop, which is super fast, I can increase it and it wouldn't phase it. But here, I probably should lower it down a little bit. What else would you want to do here? Check your file handling, how you handle those previews and when saving, things like that. So we want to always append it. We don't want to overwrite that original and have that same exact file name, even if we accidentally don't change the name of it. So look at your preferences and tweak those.